Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this super duper easy granny square blanket. This blanket is perfect if you are a beginner or if you're just looking for an easy mindless project this winter. It is easily customized, so you can make this blanket any size you like, and it also comes in written form, so if you would prefer a written pattern I will link it in the description down below. But if that sounds like something you are interested in, please just keep on watching. So to get started, you are of course going to need some yarn. I'm using 4 different colors. You can use pretty much as many colors as you like. It'll be 1 color per square. So just depending on how many squares you want to make and how big you want your blanket to be will depend on how many colors you decide to use, as well as how much yarn to use. So I'm using Maker's Aran and Eve yarn. This is an Aran weight acrylic yarn and it comes in 200-gram skeins, so I'm using about 800 grams altogether for my blanket. In saying that, my blanket is just a lap blanket. It's only going to measure about 90 centimeters by 90 centimeters, so it's not a huge blanket. If you're wanting to make something bigger, you will of course need more yarn. I am also going to be using a 7mm crochet hook for this blanket, but you can easily customize this blanket to suit any yarn and any hook size, and you'll see just how easy it is once we get started. So as I said, I am using the Aran and Eve by Maker, and I'm using the colors Matcha, Sticky Date, Carrot Cake and Scone. I'm going to be starting off with the Scone color, so this nice neutral beigey color. So I'm going to be using a magic circle. If you don't like the magic circle, I know not everybody does, you could also chain 4 and join to make a loop, but the magic circle is definitely my preferred way to start granny squares. So we're going to be starting on our first square. So starting off with a magic circle or the chain 4 and joining to make a loop method. And I'm going to chain 3. And now I'm going to complete another 2 double crochet into the center of that loop there. Just like that. Now we're going to chain 2 and we're going to complete another 3 double crochet into the center of that loop. Once you've completed those 3 stitches, you are going to chain 2 and complete another 3 double crochet. Now we are going to chain 2 once again and work our last cluster, so our last group of 3 double crochets into the center of that loop. Then we are chaining 2 and slip stitching into the top of that first chain 3 to join the round. Just like that. Now what you can do is pull this end here to tighten up the center and get rid of that hole in the middle. And that is round 1 complete. Now what we're going to do is slip stitch into that next double crochet. Just like that. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next double crochet. And then we are slip stitching into that chain 2 space. And now we're ready to begin round 2. So now we are going to chain 3, and that will count as our first stitch. So now what we want to do is complete another 2 double crochet into that same chain 2 space. 1, 2, and now we are going to chain 2 and complete another 3 double crochet into that same chain 2 space. So 1, 2, 3. Just like that, and that is the first corner of round 2 complete. So I should have explained before that the chain 2 that we complete will create the corner. So that's what gives us that square look. If you're not already familiar with how a granny square works, that's why we're chaining 2 to get us around the corner. Okay, so now what we're going to do is complete that exact same process, but in the next chain 2 space. So completing 3 double crochets into that next chain 2 space. Chaining 2 and completing another 3 double crochets into that same chain 2 space. Just like that. And we're going to repeat that in the next 2 chain 2 spaces. So I will go ahead and do that and I'll meet you back here. All right, so here I am at the end of round 2. I'm now going to slip stitch into the top of that first chain 3 to join the round. And then again, we're slip stitching into the next 2 double crochets. So 1, 2, and then slip stitching into that chain 2 space. Now we're ready to start round 3, so chaining 3. Again, that will count as our first double crochet. And now we're completing another 2 double crochet into that same chain 2 space. Once you've done that, you are going to chain 2 and complete another 3 double crochet into that chain 2 space. So 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to work our next cluster, so our next group of 3 stitches between these 2 clusters here. So you'll see here that we've got that little space in between these 2 clusters. That's where we're going to be working into next. So we're going to complete 3 double crochets in between the next 2 clusters. Then we're up to our corner space, so we are working another 3 double crochet into that chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3. Now, of course, it is time for us to turn the corner, so we're chaining 2 and completing another 3 double crochet in that chain 2 space. Just like that. And we're just going to repeat that process all the way around until we get back here to the beginning. So again, we're finding the space in between those next 2 clusters. So working into this space here, completing 3 double crochets. And then we're going to be working into our corner. So 3 double crochets, followed by chain 2 and another 3 double crochets. Just like that. So we're just going to repeat that all the way around until we get back here to the beginning. Okay, here I am at the end of round 3. Again, we are just slip stitching into the top of that chain 3 to join the round. We're then slip stitching into the next 2 double crochets and then into that chain 2 space. Chaining 3 and beginning the next round. So now you're just going to repeat that exact same process around and around and around until you have reached your desired square size. Keeping in mind that we're going to be sewing 4 squares together. So we're going to have 1 square here, 1 square here, 1 square here, and 1 square here. So you want your first square to measure half the width that you want your total blanket width to be. So if you want your blanket to measure 100 centimeters wide once it's finished, you want this square to measure 50 centimeters wide. Okay? Because we're going to be joining 2 together. I know that sounds very simple. I don't know why I'm explaining it so much. I'm sure you guys understand. But anyway, if you are following along with me and you want to make the exact same size blanket as me, I'm going to be completing a total of 15 rounds altogether, including what we've already done. Okay, so here I am at the end of my 15 rounds. Sorry the whole square doesn't fit in the frame, but I'm sure you guys get the idea. So I'm now just going to fasten off. So with this end, I am going to cut it, but with your other squares, you want to leave long tails on at least 2 of your squares, so then we can use those tails to seam our blanket together. Okay, but for this one, I'm just going to fasten it off. So that is what your square should look like. Again, you can make this as big or as little as you like. I did a total of 15 rounds altogether. So now what you're going to do is repeat that exact same process for another 3 squares, obviously in different colors, or you could do them in the same color if you like. So as you can see, I've got 4 different colored squares here, all exactly the same size. Now I'm also just going to show you how to finish off your 2 squares where we're leaving a long tail for seaming, because obviously when we finish the round, we will be joining into the top of that chain 3 there. So you won't finish exactly in the corner, and we need this working yarn to be in the corner so we can join our squares together. Obviously you don't want to have this part here that's not joined. So all we're going to do is pretty much exactly what we have been doing and just slip stitch along those 2 double crochets and into that corner space. So we're now right there in the corner. And then don't cut your yarn. We're obviously going to leave a nice long tail to seam our blanket together. Okay? So you want to do that for 2 squares. The other 2 squares you can just fasten off as normal because we only need 2 ends to seam together. So I guess you first want to figure out how you want your squares to be laid out. I want my neutral color, so the scone color and the carrot cake, which is the mustard color, to be sitting diagonal from each other. So I want my scone and my matcha, which is this green color, to be side by side. So we're going to join these 2 first. So what you want to do is position your square with the working yarn still attached. So the yarn is in the bottom corner like this, okay? Because we're going to be joining down along this seam here. Once you've got your working yarn in the right position, you're going to lay your other square on top, and we want the right sides to be facing each other. So you should be able to tell which side is the right side and which side is the wrong side. They will look a little bit different. So we want the right sides to be touching each other. So just like that. Now we can begin joining. So I'm just going to start off by chaining 1 just to give us some room to move. And I'm going to be using the back loop joining method. So basically, this is going to give us a beautiful invisible seam. So you won't even be able to see the join. So if you're worried about being able to see your working yarn on the right side of your blanket, don't stress. This is a completely invisible seam. You won't be able to see it on the right side of your blanket at all. And I'm actually going to go down a hook size to join my blanket just to make sure that those seams are nice and tight. So you don't have to, you could continue using the 7mm or whatever hook size you have been using for your blanket, but I'm just going to go down a hook size. So I'm going down to a 6mm just for the seaming to make sure it's nice and tight. Okay, so first, what we want to do is insert our hook through this chain 2 space, so through that corner space, and then through that corner space on the other square. And that's just going to join our corners together. And we're just slip stitching to join. Now what we want to do is go through the loop closest to us. So hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing, but we're only going through one loop on the first square. Then we're finding the loop the furthest from us on the back square. So we should just have those 2 loops on our hook plus obviously this loop here, which is our working yarn. Okay, and then we're going to yarn over and we're just going to slip stitch to join, just like that. Now we're going to move on to the next stitch. So again, going through that loop that is closest to us. And then on the next square, we're going through the loop that is furthest away from us and slip stitching to join. All right, so I'll show you one more time. So going through that next loop, the one closest to us, and then on the next square, we're going through the loop furthest away from us and slip stitching to join. And you're just going to repeat that all the way along this edge until you get to the next set of corners. All right, so here I am at my next corner. So what we're going to do is slip stitch into that corner space on both squares to join. Then we're going to chain 1. And I'm just going to give you a quick look at the seam. So as you can see, it is absolutely stunning. It's completely invisible. You cannot see the join at all. It sits beautifully, and this is hands down my favorite way to join granny squares. I should have mentioned earlier that you can use any joining method that you like. This is just my preferred way. Okay, so now we can join in our next 2 squares. So I've got my carrot cake color here and my sticky date color here. And again, they are on top of each other with the right sides together. Now, how you lay these out will just depend on where you want them to sit on your blanket. So for me, I want my mustard color to sit diagonal from the scone color, so this neutral color here, and I want my sticky date to sit diagonal from my matcha color. So how it's going to work is basically we are going to seam across here. So this will be folded back down in half like this. So we got our working yarn here, and then we're going to be seaming all the way just like we have been across this way. So once we've seamed across this horizontal seam here, this will open back up, and that's how our colors will sit, like that. Okay. So what you also want to make sure of is that with the other square that you still have your working yarn attached to, because remember we left long tails so we could use them for seaming. So for me, it is this carrot cake color. So you want to make sure that the working tail is on the bottom inner corner. So you want to have it down here in the middle next to the square we've already seamed, because we're then going to be using that tail to seam straight up the middle. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense to you guys. Okay, so taking your hook, we are going to start joining. So I've just finished on this square with a slip stitch into that corner space, and then we have chained 1. Now we're going to move over to this set of squares, finding those corner spaces on our next 2 squares and slip stitching through those corner spaces to join. just like that. Now we're just repeating the exact same process that we've already been doing. So slip stitching through the loop closest to us and then through the loop furthest away. And just repeating that all the way until we get to the next corner. All right, so here I am at my next corner. I'm now just going to slip stitch through those corner spaces to join. And now we can fasten off. So just making sure that is nice and secure. And that is our first seam done. So this is what you should have so far, something that looks a little bit like this. So we've joined along here and now we are going to be working this center seam down the middle. So you now just want to fold your work along the other way. So because we're now going to be seaming down here, you want to have your open edges together like this. All right, and you should have your working yarn in this corner here, and that's the yarn we're going to use to join along this edge. So I'm just going to chain one just so I can turn my hook around, and now we are just repeating the exact same process that we've just done. So for the first one, we're just slip stitching into those corner spaces. And now we are slip stitching through the loop closest to us and the loop furthest from us. And repeating that until we get to the center seam here. Here I am at the center seam. So if you look really closely, you'll see you've got the two corner spaces here from these two squares. So what we're going to do first is slip stitch through those corner spaces. Then we're going to chain one because that's going to give us a little jump over that center seam there. Then we're going to find the next two corner spaces on the next two squares and slip stitch through that space. And now we can just continue as normal until we get to the next set of corners, and then we're all done seaming. So I will meet you there. All right, here we are at the final corner. So again, just slip stitching through that corner space to join, and then we can fasten off. Just securing that end there. And we are done pretty much. There is another optional step, of course, if you are wanting to add the tassels. So this is what it should be looking like. Again, look at that beautiful invisible seam. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. You cannot get better than that, honestly. Now, there are a few options here. You could, of course, go in and complete a border. I'm not going to because I just like how it looks at the moment. But what I am going to do is add some tassels. Now, this is a completely optional step. You do not have to do this, of course, but I just like that little bit of extra something, you know? So if you are wanting to add tassels, please keep following along. Otherwise, if you are happy with how your blanket's looking, you could just go in and sew in all your ends. You might like to block it if it's not sitting perfectly square, totally up to you, but you are done. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. If you are here for the tassels, please keep on watching. All right, so if you are adding tassels like I am, you now want to go and make 4 tassels in 4 different colors. I mean, you don't have to do 4 different colors, that's just what I'm doing, but I've gone and made 4 tassels in 4 different colors. If you're not familiar with how to make a tassel, you can check out my how to make a tassel video where I go into depth on how to make a tassel both with and without a tassel maker. So go and check that out if you are unsure of how to make a tassel. But once you have your 4 tassels ready to go, I'm going to show you how we're going to join them to your blanket. Okay, so first up, we want to figure out where we want to place our tassels. So for me, I'm doing mine opposite. So for instance, you can see I've got my mustard colored square down here. So I'm going to add my mustard colored tassel to the opposite corner, so into this corner here, so the diagonal corner. Same goes for every other color, okay? But you can position yours however you like. I'm going to start off with my mustard colored tassel and finding that diagonal corner. This is very, very easy, by the way. All I'm going to do is, with this end that we've got here on our tassel, I'm going to pass one side through that corner space. And literally all I'm going to do is tie it on in a double knot so it's nice and secure. You could even do a triple knot if you like, if you want to be extra safe. And then we are obviously going to go in and hide these ends. So taking your darning needle and just threading one end onto it at a time. I'm just going to go into my tassel straight through the middle and pull that end through. And you'll see now that that end is completely hidden. We're going to do the exact same for the other one. And like I said, so easy. Again, going straight through the middle of our tassel, pulling through, and voila, the end is hidden. So you're now just going to repeat that exact same process for every corner, and then you are done. So it's as easy as that, so simple. As you can see here, it is nice and secure. That tassel is not going anywhere. But yeah, go and repeat that for the other 3 corners, and I will meet you back here for the end result. And here she is looking absolutely beautiful. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so you will be notified of all my future videos. But until next time, stay safe, be kind, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!